All right, we're going to get started tonight. Got a bunch of announcements, and then we'll take prayer requests. I'll try to get these in order. Tomorrow night is game nights here at the building, 6 o'clock. There will be snacks, and we're going to be doing Ticket to Ride, which if you've never played that before, it's a very fun game, but it's also beginner friendly. And so if you have not played many board games in your life, Ticket to Ride is a easy to learn, very, very fun game. We have this coming Sunday, the 22nd, is the ladies' 80s and 90s decades event. 5 o'clock here at the building. Wear your comfiest set of pajamas. The next Saturday, the 28th, is a sewing class at 3 o'clock here at the building. Bring your sewing machine if you have one, and something that needs to be hemmed. All skill levels are welcome. And then next Sunday, the 29th, is our men's ministry boot camp event. We'll have a meal, we'll have a devotional, and then an activity for us that night. All men and boys of the congregation are welcome, and you're welcome to bring a friend as well. The next thing is the Ladies' Day, which is November 2nd. That's a Saturday, and it's also going to double as our 2000s decades event. And there's a sign up on the Welcome Center to help run the Ladies' Day if you would like to help, as well as on the Welcome Center, Supper and Sing volunteers in October. We're doing Supper and Sing on Wednesday nights again. And so if you would like to help provide one of the meals, you can sign up and pair up together on that list. I think that was it. I think that's all I got. Any other announcements that I might have missed or prayer requests? Yes, Chris. So make sure we get signed up on that list. There's plenty of leftover chips in that we could eat that. And so there's definitely M&Ms in there. And so we could just have church leftover night, you know. It's basically what I eat for lunch every day, so it's just chips and M&Ms. So prayer requests. Yeah. Oh.
Great nephew Barrett, we were just out there to see him and my mom, and so he came over. He looks great. He was we got a great picture of him, and he wanted to actually wrestle. He was back in school, and so he's in kind of a remission now. He still has to do his treatment for some more years, but looks great, feels great, and so just trying to thank everybody for all those prayers.
That's great. That is fantastic. Praise for Barrett. Other prayer? Yeah, DJ. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. That is great. I saw that. I saw that post. Yeah, Linda became a great grandma. I saw that post and I was like, wait, aren't you supposed to be in surgery right now? But I'm glad to hear that Linda is doing well. Any other prayer requests? I have one from Morgan. She said that I could share this. She's got a friend whose name is Brittany. She has a 12-year-old son named Connor, who's been struggling with a lot of violent tendencies, both towards other people and towards himself. Anger management, social issues and stuff like that she was wanting prayers for as well. If that is all, then we will have our song led by Phil, and then Scott Matson's got our 90 Seconds of Faith, and I'll close us out in prayer tonight.
My God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When through the woods and forest glades I wander, and hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees. When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur, and hear the brook and feel the gentle breeze, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God his Son not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shouts of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration, and then proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
There are a number of miracles that Jesus did in the Bible, in the New Testament. Let's pick one. After feeding 5,000, he goes to himself and he to pray, sends his disciples across the Galilee, Sea of Galilee, and later comes walking to them on the water. Ask yourself, do I really believe that? Do I really believe Jesus walked on water? And my response is, why not? Why not believe it? You know? Why wouldn't people believe something like that? I mean, it's not like if you believe it, you're going to get thrown in the loony bin or something like that. You know? It's just really, you know, and as I think about it, the only thing I think was the reason not to believe is just you're too full of yourself. Oh, I can't believe that. That goes against science. There's, you know, science, so. But selfishness really keeps us from doing a lot of things that could benefit us. You know, and the only time it's really good to be selfish is when you're a baby. You know, when you're a baby, you can't do anything to yourself. When a baby cries out, it's like, hey, I'm the most important person here, take care of me. You know, but we grow out of that pretty quick, you know. Unfortunately, a lot of people just never give up enough self. And they can't see and grasp the great blessings and plans that God has for us, you know. And you think about it, something else. If you live your whole life selfishly, what do you get? A nice warm bed to die in? Your own hospital room to die in? You know, there's an old story, I remember it from Russia, where this guy was standing up for what he believed in, and there were some people around him that took up weapons, and they were gonna kill him, and somebody steps in, a leader steps in, stops him, and he takes the young man with him and says, you know, they would have killed you, and he says, well, maybe I would have killed some of them first. And then the guy replies, and in your grave you would have been proud. You know, unfortunately, the world just can't seem to give up self, you know, but we have. I'm so proud of all of you. You've been able to give up self to the point where you believe that there is a God and that he sent his son to die for our sins. And there is so much to gain from that, you know. As human beings, all we really need is a little true perspective. You know, if I live for self my whole life, you know, and I'll argue it's not really that great, you know. But if you live for self your whole life, you just don't get that much. If you find Jesus and you live for Jesus the rest of your life, there are so many blessings to be had. We're sitting together in one of them right now. We are the church, and the church comes with so many great blessings, you know. And so, as we go on our daily walk, stay on the path, you know. Stay on the straight and narrow path. There are so many great blessings and rewards to this. And not only that, we get the chance to be a blessing for others. You know, think about how awesome it's going to be to have had some part in somebody else getting to heaven and avoiding hell, you know. There is so much good that comes from giving up our selfish tendencies and grabbing hold of God's promises and following Jesus. Okay? So stay on that path.
Let's pray. We're able to come together as your church and learn more about you and challenge ourselves with the lessons that we're about to learn tonight. God, there's a few people that are on our hearts that we'd like to lift up to you. We want to praise you for Barrett's condition and the progress that he has made, and we just pray that you continue to be with him and be with that whole situation. We also want to praise you for Linda and her successful surgery, and that she can heal and get back to us quickly. Got two individuals that we don't know personally, but we hear about these things and our hearts just go out to them, and we just ask you to be with both of these situations. that you be with DJ's friend Walker and his whole family, as they are no doubt struggling through all of this, and that your healing hand be upon him, and whatever situation that they find themselves in, that they can find strength and comfort through you. God, we pray for Brittany and her son Connor and that whole situation. God, we know that you see it all, and know what's going on there, and that you be with the entire family as they struggle through this, and give them patience and strength and courage to get through it. God, help us in our daily lives to be more like your Son, to be less selfish as we strive to help others, and most importantly, try to help them to see you for who you truly are, and to get to heaven someday. God, we love you so very much. We can't say that enough. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen. Let's go to class. All right, we are in 1 Kings tonight. Last Wednesday, Mike filled in for me, which I've only heard great things about that class. Can someone tell me, or a group of you tell me, what happened in chapter 2?
You see, I read it and I was like, I heard the Godfather music playing, you know. Benaiah took care
Of some business, some family business. And I don't know, it's kind of, did anyone find it, or did you guys talk about this in class, of just how, I don't know, how strange and kind of brutal Solomon's first act as king was? Yeah. Yeah, Phil?
It's almost like David didn't want to take care of his wife, so he said, Solomon can.
Yeah. If you were,
I don't know if he was passing it off, or if it's because that he felt like he shouldn't. I don't know.
yeah, one of the guys that was taken care of was Joab, right? And if you remember going through 2 Samuel when we did, and just, I mean, Joab he's just like this little rascal, right? He was constantly like picking fights with people and doing things even after David had told him, like, I think of the Absalom one, right? Like, do not kill my son. And Joab's like, oh, I'm going to do it anyways. And somehow, through that situation of defying the king, he lived. He lived through it. And as much as David was known to be this warrior king person, we know that we covered this in chapter 1, that David kind of had this, he had a soft spot in his heart for his children, and that seemingly there was very little discipline being done with his children, and also with maybe some of his close associates there too. How did Joab survive all of that? Maybe David, he just couldn't bring himself to do that himself. And so when Samson, who, I mean, he's seen some things and knows some things, Solomon, that's what Solomon's friends called him. Solomon, we're going to get it right. When Solomon finally was in charge, and he showed his brother leniency once, and then his brother overstepped, and Solomon told him, "Don't do it." Maybe he was trying to call his bluff. I don't know. But Solomon took care of business. And that brings us into chapter 3. Mike, did you get done with all of chapter 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. This is a big chapter. A lot of stuff going on.
So that brings us to chapter 3. As kind of, I don't know, dark and murdery as chapter 2 was, chapter 3 is kind of, it's like a ray of sunshine peeking through the clouds here. And so I'm glad that Mike got to cover chapter 2 for me, so I can talk about the good stuff in chapter 3. Verse 1, it says this: Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. We see the first of what we know will be many political marriages that Solomon enters into here. A political marriage was very common, especially among royalty in the ancient world, and to some degree still takes place in the modern age. And they were done for all the reasons that you think of, right? If you, not only is it a true bond between kingdoms so that, trade and commerce and stuff can be exchanged there, but also it's like if you have family on the other side, then you're less likely to go and want to kill those people because either way that it goes, one of the two are going to say, hey, well, but that's my family. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe we should try to get along instead. But this was not Solomon's first marriage. We have to do a little deduction here and fast forward just a little bit. But in 1 Kings 14:21, it tells us that his son Rehoboam came to the throne when he was 41 years old. And in 1 Kings 11:42, it tells us that Solomon reigned 40 years. So this means that Rehoboam was born to his mother, a wife of Solomon named Naamah of the Ammonites, before he came to the throne and before he married the daughter of Pharaoh. And so even though this is the first marriage that we are hearing about, this was not his first marriage. Which brings us into, I guess it's not all a ray of sunshine because we have to talk about this. Solomon's multiple marriages and marriages, especially to foreign women, would cause great disaster in his life. A lot of people, they might use Solomon as the poster child for whether it's trying to justify polygamy, or the God told the Israelites specifically, do not intermarry with these foreign people, because they will lead your sons astray into idolatry. We're going to flip over to Nehemiah and see what this book has to say about good old King Solomon. In Nehemiah 13, verses 25 through 27, this is what Nehemiah says. When, just some context here, the same thing was happening. The Israelites have come back out of captivity, and they come into the land, and Nehemiah is about building the wall around the city, and so this is obviously taking a long time, and the sons of Israel start to take wives of these foreign women that are in the land. And it says in verse 25 of Nehemiah 13, "And I confronted them and cursed them and beat some of them and pulled out their hair. And I made them take an oath in the name of God, saying, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons or for yourselves. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin on account of such women? Among the many nations there was no king like him, and he was beloved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, foreign women made him even to sin. Shall we then listen to you and do all this great evil and act treacherously against our God by marrying foreign women?" The foreign wives of Solomon, which we will get there in the first part here of 1 Kings, were more than a bad example to the rest of Israel, and this was written down for eternity. So, bad example for us. It was more than just it was just not just a bad example. They ruined his spiritual life. The pattern here that we see at the beginning of chapter 3 here was set as he married this Egyptian princess, and perhaps made political sense, but not spiritual sense. Do we get caught up in these same dilemmas today? Maybe of not taking a foreign princess to make a political alliance, but we get caught up when things perhaps make worldly sense, but not spiritual sense, or counseling or mental health sense, but not spiritual sense, or business sense, but not spiritual sense. How do we keep spiritual things in the forefront of our minds when we have all of these other senses out there that tell us, no, this is the way you should do it? What do you think?
How do we keep spiritual things in the forefront of our mind?
Well, one way is the same way you keep the other things on the forefront of your mind, by looking at them all the time. So if you look at the Bible a little more, that'll help keep spiritual things on the forefront of your mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Scott.
You think about the good that can be done. I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but I've kind of thought if I could live my life, if I could grow spiritually to the point where I really don't sin at all, the occasional, could I do miracles? Could God let me do some miraculous stuff if I could be pure enough, and then I come back to myself. But the idea is just how much good can I do if I'm doing God's will?
Yeah.
If you look at the promises God gave to Israel, and I'm not sure about this, but at this time the kingdom's united, right? Yeah. So past, I guess, great things he did, and he's got the kingdom united. They could have set such a great example, and who knows what God could have done with Israel at the time.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a chance.
Phil?
I think one way that we can focus more on spiritual things is by the company we keep, the things we listen to, the things we read. You know, if we're listening to this music that is so horrible that, you know, you got my wife yesterday and I got yours today and all this kind of stuff, you know, it's you can't think spiritual things. And so sometimes people wonder how I have so many songs and all the words to every verse in my head. It's because that's all I listen to. So I think that if we focus on what we're listening to, what we read, and who we hang out with, it'll change our dynamic of our lives a lot.
Al?
In Hebrews, the 10th chapter, verse 23 and 24, maybe 25, said, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." So it's been mentioned, the book, the people we associate with, the meeting together, try to build each other up. It's self-control of your mind, keeping it pointed the right direction.
He wrote in Proverbs, the one that made, I think of it, in 16:3 says, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established." That kind of makes it a little more personal.
Yep.
Talking about our thoughts, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think that,
That proverb, you know, if you're busy doing spiritual things, then you're probably going to be thinking spiritual things, and keeping those spiritual thoughts in the forefront of our mind. Phil, I like what you said about, you know, thinking about the company that we keep, and you know, maybe it comes back to, Scott, what you were saying in your 90 seconds here of being selfish, right? We hold ourselves in such high esteem of, like, I can be around these people and they're not gonna affect me. Like, I have pretty strong willpower and I have self-control and stuff like that. But influence is a powerful thing. And most of the time when we think of influence, we only think of the negative, of people trying to tear us down, when the opposite is also true, of putting people around you who you know are going to help you focus on spiritual things. When I might be inclined to, you know, start going to the right hand or to the left, of having someone around me, a mentor or a friend that I know is will bring me back onto the path that leads to righteousness, I think is so important. And here we see Solomon. It's just one alliance, right? It's just one princess. You know, like this will be good for our kingdom, and just keep that in the back of your mind as we continue through this book. Go ahead, Scott. Justifying?
Yeah, I was thinking
Rationalizing? Yeah. And that's keeping our eyes on us, right? Like, look at us. Look how smart I am. Look how strong I am. Absolutely. Verses 2 through 4. It says, "The people were sacrificing at the high places. However, because no house had yet been built for the name of the Lord, Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and made offerings at the high places. And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for there was the great high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At this time, altars were allowed in Israel at various high places or spiritual cities or holy cities, as long as those altars were used unto the Lord, not being corrupted by idolatry. But when the temple was built, then all of the sacrificing was then centralized and authorized in the temple. It says that Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. It's almost a grotesque amount of sacrifice being demonstrated here by Solomon's great wealth and his heart to use it to glorify God. And this was an important event marking the ceremonial beginning of Solomon's reign. In 2 Chronicles chapter 1, it also records this same thing. It says, 2 Chronicles 1 verses 2 through 3, says, Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, to the judges, and to all the leaders in all Israel, the heads of fathers' houses, and Solomon and all the assembly with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon for the tent of meeting of God, which Moses, the servant of God, had made in the wilderness, was there. And so the tabernacle itself was there at Gibeon. Perhaps that is why it's called the Great High Place. We don't know, but that is where the tabernacle was. And I think it's also interesting that Solomon, when he was beginning his reign, it wasn't just a hymn thing of I need to sacrifice to the Lord to make things, God is first in this kingdom. He also brought with him all of the leadership, which I think is just an incredible example for us to follow here of Solomon realizing that he's not alone in this, that he's bringing the judges and the generals and even the fathers of households, even down to that level of saying, if we're going to do this, if we're going to be God's nation, his people, then it's going to take all of us. Phil?
It almost appears to me, as I read this, that Solomon showed love for the Lord, and he did the instructions that his father had given him, except that he offered offerings at the
Yeah.
high places. Those high places was not to the God of heaven, apparently. They were to idols of the people he was trying to keep in good with, too. That's what appears to me. I could be wrong. I have been before.
Like I said, I think it's a both and type thing, right? Of there was no temple, and the tabernacle and the ark were kind of like they were here and there and everywhere. Which I have that here, which I think is really interesting. If you didn't know this, the Joshua brought both the ark and the tabernacle to Shiloh. That's in Joshua chapter 18. In the days of Eli, the ark was captured. We covered that, right? The ark was captured by the Philistines, and the tabernacle was wrecked. You can read about that in 1 Samuel 4. Then the ark came back to Kiriath Jearim. You can find that in 1 Samuel 7. And Saul restored the tabernacle at Nob. That's in 1 Samuel 21. Then Saul moved the tabernacle to Gibeon, where it is now, right? You can read about that in 1 Chronicles 16. And then David brought the ark to Jerusalem and built a temporary tent for it there. So, with all of that, right, it wasn't so much a place, like what we think of as the temple, right? The temple's not moving. The temple's in Jerusalem. It's a brick and mortar and gold and silver and, the cedars of Lebanon stuff. Like, it's not moving. You can't move that thing. But the tabernacle, it was made to move. And it did. And so it wasn't so much the place, and I agree with you that these high places, why are they called high places? Is because when they came into the land, these were what the Canaanites viewed as, these are holy places. And then taking them over, and then that led to a whole bunch of the sacrificing there and burning incense there led them into idolatry and paganism and stuff like that. But seemingly, Solomon offered sacrifices to God at one of these high places where the tabernacle was. I do kind of see in there too of he was great except for this one thing that he did. But I also, Solomon did more than just this one thing that was not right.
To me, it just shows that he's already moved away from God a little bit because of his wife.
Perhaps. Perhaps. Yes, sir.
Verse 3 says except unto exceptions.
There you go. Yeah.
John 12:26 says, the Lord speaks and says, where I am, there will my servants also. Jesus speaking, exceptions.
Yeah.
Talking about spiritual things.
Yeah. I have, I watch my language except for when I'm watching football, The exceptions do get us. Any other thoughts around that? It is kind of I don't know. It's a strange thing. And I think it's kind of cool that the Bible records it. Verses 5 through 9. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart towards you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father. Although I am but a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people?" This is an amazing promise. And perhaps a temptation too great for many of us, if we're honest with ourselves, of God coming to us and saying, "I will give you whatever you want. Tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you." God seemed to offer Solomon whatever. And this wasn't only because Solomon sacrificed 1,000 animals. It was because his heart was surrendered to God, and God wanted to work something great through Solomon. What would you ask for? Would wisdom be your answer?
not when you're younger. It's not what first thing comes to your mind.
Yeah. Student loan debt paid off.
Great. Or maybe, you know, we're in the world of just like, I can't even spare any thoughts towards this because I'm not in this situation. That maybe our response is, man, I wish God would say that to me. When you read, what did Jesus say in Matthew 7, verse 7? Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. Or in John 15, verse 7, it says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire and it shall be done for you. Or in 1 John 5:14, it says, now this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask him anything according to his will, he hears us. This proposition that God is giving to Solomon here, I think a lot of us wish, or at least when I was a kid, you know, seeing the movie Aladdin, all right, I played this game all the time in my head while I was falling asleep. I'm like, man, if I had 3 wishes, what would it be? And I would say a lot of us it would come back to maybe money, possessions, or power. For me, it was to have six-pack abs, no matter what I ate. I said that was going to be one of my wishes. Never have to exercise, just be always fit. How incredible would that be? I think answering this question, if we take it seriously, of thinking, you know, putting ourselves in Solomon's shoes here, might reveal maybe a little too much about ourselves that we're not, at least we'd be in denial about. Jerry?
He was between the age of 14 all the way up to 20. I personally think he was about 16 from my studies. But he did live in a palace. He did grow up as a king's son. He knew all of those things.
He already had the fastest
So
chariot.
he already had the physical things. But remarkable to me that a 14 or 15-year-old boy would say, give me wisdom first, and then, you know, when I was 14 or 15, I don't think I would have said
No.
wisdom. So I think it's a good part of the story here.
Yeah. Wisdom. What is wisdom? What do you think? It's not putting, what is it? Not
Tomatoes in fruit salad. I've heard that.
before. How would you define wisdom?
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's in Proverbs.
The ability to apply what you know.
Applying what you know.
Says here discernment.
What was that?
Says here discernment.
Discernment. Yeah.
Knowledge with a beneficial nature.
Knowledge with a beneficial nature. Solomon said here,
Give your servant an understanding mind. That's what the ESV says in verse 9 there. An understanding mind. Maybe it's a mind or a heart that listens.
Wise.
yeah.
How important is wisdom in our lives?
We have a lot of facts, we just need to know how to use them.
Yeah.
Well, even though we're not charged to be a judge of a lot of people, like Solomon was being charged with here, we still need to be able to tell the difference between good and bad. And that's what he was asking for too,
Yeah.
this understanding heart.
Yeah.
Solomon already understood that the key component of leadership is wise and just discernment. And many leaders do not have this discernment or the courage to use it. In verses 10 through 15, we get the response. It says, "It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked for this. And the God said to him, because you have asked this and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but you have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Then he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings, and made a feast for all his servants. Solomon asked for a discerning mind, or we just call that wisdom, and God responded because he didn't ask for frivolous things. He would give him not only what he asked for, but also more. It reminds me of Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. It says, "Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power at work within us." Solomon wisely asked God regarding his own character, not his own possessions. And what we are, or the saying is what we are is more important than what we have. Things like character and honor and wisdom are far more important and far more valuable than money, riches, possessions. With this newfound wisdom, we get a story. Verses 16 through 27. This is what it says. Then 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "Oh, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. Then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, she also gave birth, and we were alone. There was no one else with us in the house, only we 2 were in the house. And this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while your servant slept, and laid him at her breast, and laid her dead son at my breast. When I arose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, behold, he was not the child that I had borne." But the other woman said, "No, the living child is mine, and the dead child is yours." The first said, "No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine." Thus they spoke before the king. Then the king said, "The one says, 'This is my son that is alive, and your son is dead.' And the other says, 'No, your son is dead, and my son is the living one.' The king said, 'Bring me a sword.' So a sword was brought before the king. And the king said, 'Divide the living child in 2, and give half to one and half to the other.' Then the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her son, 'O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put him to death.' But the other said, 'He shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him.' Then the king answered and said, "Give the living child to the first woman, and by no means put him to death. She is his mother." And all Israel heard the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. That's wisdom. Can you imagine, though, being in the in the throne room there, and this case is being laid out, and he hears both sides, and Solomon says, "Bring me my sword." What those women might have been thinking, or the people who are around there, like, Solomon's just he's gonna go full Benaiah on these two women, and just kill them. Or maybe he's like, "Oh, I'll just kill the child, and then we don't have anything to argue about." But then he does the wisest thing of seeing or trying to get these two women to reveal what is truly in their hearts. And then obviously the one would have rather have given up the child if it meant that he would get to live, rather than die without him. There's a lot of stories told about Solomon's wisdom that are outside the Bible. In fact, that was a practice of many rabbis back in the day, because that last part there, right, that all heard the judgment, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. And so, these legends spread, and I found one. I found one story about the wisdom of Solomon. I'd like to read it for you guys, because you've probably never heard this before, because I never heard it until I found it. This is told by a Jewish rabbi. It says, "A demon showed Solomon something that he had never seen before. A Canaanite, whom the demon brought out of the ground, and Solomon immediately saw that he had two heads. When the Canaanite wanted to return again, he could not go back to his dwelling place deep under the earth. So he married and had 7 sons, one of whom also had 2 heads. And when the 2-headed father died, and the 2-headed son claimed a double share of the inheritance, but the other 6 brothers thought that he should only get one, the Sanhedrin couldn't decide the case. So Solomon prayed for wisdom and finally poured hot water on one of the heads. And when he did, both heads flinched and cried out. And from this Solomon deduced that they were one person, not 2, and should have only 1 share of the inheritance." Anyone ever hear that story before? The 2-headed person here. Anyways, stories, that's not in the Bible, okay? But stories like this, because of Solomon's great wisdom, legends begin to spread, and myths begin to arise. But they all had their origin right here, with Solomon figuring out an impossible situation. Jerry, what were you going to say?
Of all of these promises, the only one he didn't get was the long life, but it came with a condition. And so if he would have done right and followed God's commands, no telling how long he would have got to live.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You wonder what kind of stories the Queen of Sheba told when she got married.
Yeah.
Because she exclaimed that, the half and half, you haven't heard half of the story about Solomon. So you wonder what kind of stories she told when she got home, and where those fit.
Two-headed demon, you know, whatever. Before we close, speaking of wisdom,
in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 24, it says, "But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God." And so if we're trying to, besides just, going and sacrificing 1,000 burnt offerings in order to get an audience with God so he can ask us what we would want, the way we have to do it is if we draw closer to Jesus, then we're drawing closer to wisdom, because he is the wisdom of God, which includes meditating on his words, which includes doing what God or Jesus has told us to do. And if we can do that, if we can grow closer to Jesus to make our lives more like his, then that might be our best shot. Let's pray, and then we'll be dismissed tonight. God, thank you so much for the time that we've been given tonight to look into your word, to contemplate these things. God, as we've been talking about the example of Solomon and the things that he did right and the things that he did wrong, God, help us to take the example that has been recorded for us for its intended purpose, so that we might not make the same mistakes that he made, and the things that he did right, that we might model our lives after those. God, give us wisdom. Give us discerning minds and listening hearts, so that we might know what is right and wrong in our world today. We love you. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen. Good night.